Matters. An interactive program brought to you by MTA International.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of Faith Matters. Welcome to you, our viewers. After all, this is your program where you, our viewers on MTA, set the agenda. Again, Jazakumullah, thank you very much for the wide range of questions we've received from yourselves. And a reminder just from the outset as to the email, for those of you who are not familiar with it at the moment, email us your questions, your point of opinion, clarification that you seek on faithmatters@mta.tv. That's faithmatters, one word, at mta.tv. And for those of you looking to use the fax, it's 44 for the UK, 208 687 8037. The other issue which has been raised by many viewers is as to what's happened with some of the previous programs. Well, once it's been shown on MTA, you can also now access previous programs on YouTube through MTA Online 1, and you can put in either the subject of your choice or actually put in Faith Matters, and you'll get the full range of programs currently on YouTube. With that, I want to please, first of all, welcome my panel, my very distinguished panel. A very warm assalamu alaikum to you all. It's a pleasure seeing you all back. Your familiar faces now on Faith Matters, but firstly, I have to my right, Maulana Jahangir Khan Sahib, who's head of our French desk. Welcome, Jahangir Sahib. Next to his right is Azhar Hanif Sahib, who's Naib Amir of the USA, who joins us again from the US. Jazakallah for making a long trip over. And to his right is the President of the Qazar Board here in the UK, Dr. Zaid Khan Sahib. Assalamu alaikum and welcome once again to Faith Matters. We've again been receiving a wide range of questions, and today's program is no different. And the first one is very apt. We start things with dua, as we did this program before we came on air. And that's exactly the subject matter which we've got from our first question, and it's from Noreen Ahmed, who writes from Belgium. And Jazakallah, Noreen Saiba, for your question. She congratulates everyone on Faith Matters. Jazakallah for your kind words on the program. And she says that she wants to ask a spiritual question. It's a simple one, which may actually require a slightly more detailed answer in some respects. It says this, and she asks, how does a person know when dua is heard, when the prayer is actually heard, it's kabul? Does he or she feel something different? Jahangir Sahib.
I think the best way to know whether a prayer or dua has been accepted, or is qabul, as the person has asked, is when it is fulfilled. Whatever has been asked for is obtained. Then obviously the prayer has been heard. But apart from that, I think the questioner wants to know, is there a special feeling that one may experience when one has prayed, and whereby one may know that God has now heard the prayer has reached, and God has responded. And yes, that is the case. Of course, it will vary from person to person, but every person who prays very sincerely to God, after a while, when God has accepted that prayer, or immediately sometimes when God accepts the prayer, one would feel a special sensation, a special feeling inside one's heart. And that, of course, would vary from person to person, as I had said. I recall the story of Maulvi Ghulam Rasul Rajaki Sahib, who was a companion, one of the greatest companions of the promised Messiah alayhi salam, who was asked that very question, because his prayers were heard to a remarkable degree. And because of this, thousands of people would go to him throughout the year.
When you say heard?
Meaning accepted by God. Accepted, where they would find acceptance with God. So thousands of people would go to him every year and ask him, request him to pray for certain things. And the marvelous thing about this individual, who was a very saintly man, a follower of the promised Messiah alayhi salam, from the beginning, was that he would give you the answer immediately, whether the prayer had been heard, his prayer had been heard or not.
There and then.
There and then. So, for example, a student would come and ask him to pray for him to succeed in his exams, and he would pray, and then he'd say, you're going to pass, the prayer has been accepted. Or he'd say, the prayer has not been accepted. And so, obviously, people became, curious as to how he'd know. So when he was asked, he said, actually, when I pray, God has given me this special blessing, that when the prayer has been accepted by God, something like a light bulb lights up inside my heart. and then I know that the prayer has been accepted. If it doesn't light up, then I know the prayer has not been accepted. So that was his personal experience. Not everyone, of course, will have that kind of an experience, very few would. But there is a kind of a feeling that people will, by which they'll know that God has heard the prayer. And it might not happen for every prayer. Sometimes prayers are not heard for years. But if they persevere, then God eventually, if He wills, accepts it. So patience is also required.
I think that perseverance and patience, as a sub, for example, you take the prayer of istikhara, where you're reflecting on pending on an important matter, and quite often some people take that again in literal terms, that I've prayed for the required number of days, I've said the prayer, and I should see a vision or a dream or a sign. But sometimes, quite often, it's just that sense of security, knowing deep within, as Jahangir Sahib related the incident with the companion of Hazrat Nasir Maud, that you know from within.
Yes, what it is, as he has rightfully said, there's an inner sense of the prayer you offer, if truly it came from the depth of your heart. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said: if you pray as if your heart is burning and you're experiencing a death, that prayer is never rejected. The only thing left or remains to be seen is how it's going to be accepted. And thus the prayer's acceptance can come in many forms. It can come in the form of actual requests you have made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His wisdom and His understanding. If He believes this is best for you, He'll give it to you. So as He said, you can see that. If I'm praying, oh Allah help me, and He helps, then I know my prayer is accepted. Don't need to go to any other source. But if I find that what I asked for in terms of help, something else comes to me, Allah may have chosen that this is the better answer to my prayer. My prayer was not rejected. I didn't get some sudden feeling over myself. The thing I asked for didn't come, but somehow there's been a change in my life or experiences or circumstances that indicates that. And the last form of it is, if not in this world, then that prayer will be accepted in the next life to come. So how will we know that? Only when we go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He's showing us those gifts that He's reserved for us in the next life. Then we know, oh, those prayers too were answered. And beloved Qutb IV used to always tell a story of the old man who was praying his whole life, and his students would listen to his prayers, and they would say, you know, this man is praying, that God's never accepting. Why does he keep praying? And at the end of this whole discussion, the old man said, look, my job is to pray. It's God's job to accept, or His prerogative to accept or reject as He wishes, and I have nothing to do with that. That gave his heart contentment, which means his prayers were being answered. For once he said that and affirmed it, God said, all your prayers have been blessed and all of them have been accepted from day one. So this is the real secret.
It's based, yourself, on that conviction. Some people, and I'm sure all of us come across, and perhaps even if I'd say, sometimes when you're praying for something, you're trying to persevere. I know growing up where your mother used to say, well, it's maybe it's maybe not best for you. And it's very hard to accept, I'm praying to God. Well, I'm praying.
You want that
God, I want that prayer
Yeah.
answered. But the principle is perseverance and actually belief that prayer will be answered ultimately.
Yes, and also to have a sense of humility about the whole thing, because like Azhar Sahib has rightly said, when one prays for something, it's not necessarily the best thing for the person. And we have to trust in God's better judgment. God knows what's best for us. So sometimes we might be a bit disappointed with the answer, but it's always better in the end. Now there's one thing which I did forget to mention. There was another mysterious, in a way, you could say, manner in which God actually lets you know that your prayer has been accepted. And that's when He actually tells you that He informs you that your prayer has been accepted, either through a dream or a vision or a revelation even. And we've seen this in the case of the promised Messiah ﷺ, where he'd pray for something, and very soon afterwards a revelation would come to him telling him his prayer had been accepted. And so this is a very potent way through which one may know that the prayer has been heard. And there were so many incidents of this. I mean, we could take up the whole night giving instances of how this has happened. But it's a very interesting subject, and everybody really should pray and then see how God responds. This is one of the most potent proofs of God's existence, when He answers such prayers in this way.
Jazakallah, gentlemen, and I hope, Noreen, Saiba, we've answered your question, but again, if there's further clarification or questions you have, please email in.